So welcome to this talk. We'll be talking today about extending the AEM authoring, as we mentioned, through JavaScript extension on AppBuilder. So to close the evening tonight as the last presentation, tips a bit more JavaScript. Just to read the room and to know who I'm talking about, who does know about AppBuilder? OK. And who has used it actively? OK, good. So the objective of today, if possible, is that you know more or less what AppBuilder does. One use case in that case will be extending AEM authoring. And we'll try to see a bit what's available there and the whole features. So first about me, I'm Félix Delval. I'm a senior engineer with AEM Sites, but I come from commerce in the back, so I have a bit of experience in both now. So the agenda for this presentation. First, we're going to look at the AEM authoring. So I think that's something you should be experts in. I'm just going to repass about those two views that we'll be discussing about, just we're OK with nomenclature. Then we'll be looking at the Extensibility Framework. Yeah, perfect. It was too tight. Now it's perfect. So we'll be looking then at the UI Extensibility Framework. And we'll be trying to make a simple use case, which has a bit of an impact, which is a good way to think about what you could be implementing with this box of Lego I'll presenting you. So first, we'll be starting looking at the AEM authoring experience. So just as a notification, this is AEM Cloud Service authoring experience. I'll be only mentioning about Cloud Fragment Console and Cloud Fragment Editor. So the first one that we'll be talking about is the Content Fragment Console. Excuse me for the correct name. So in case you're not familiar with this view, it's just a way for you to be able to navigate through configs on the left. You've got the list of the config fragment on the right, and you are able to do actions contextually, like the one create on top. And you can select one or multiple, do an action of them. So we'll be able to see what we can do with this view. And the second view we'll be working on is the AEM Content Fragment Editor. Again, this one, once you select a content fragment, you will be able to edit the different properties. You will be able to see the Windows property and add more fields and modify them. OK. So we've said that they were coming with the UI Extensibility Framework. So exactly what is the UI Extensibility Framework? So it's a way for you to be able to create UI apps that will be embedded within the Adobe Cloud UI experience, so hosted on our servers. They are JavaScript apps because that's the main language of AppBuilder. And the main reason of their existence, this UI app, is to more personalize the experience within AEM editor and console fragment admin. You'll see also in the future that the exact same technology will be applied to other products. It is now being integrated in Adobe Commerce. I will not be mentioning that more in this presentation. So we've mentioned that those apps are running on AppBuilder. I see that most of you don't know what AppBuilder is. So AppBuilder is a portmanteau term that regroups a bunch of different technologies and products bound together. There's IO Runtime, which is the serverless provider that comes with AppBuilder. You can run your JavaScript code in there. There's the custom events, or also known as IO events, which, if you're familiar with the developer console, you've probably heard about. Then it comes with a bunch of CLIs and SDK, of which AIO CLI is the most prominent. Cloud services, so this is where you will be able to store your built JavaScript, so the application will be built there. Then there's a Spectrum UI framework, which is Spectrum UI, so the look and feel of all the Adobe application. And the last one is the developer tools, which are testing and other tools. There was a question in a previous talk about whether or not there was GraphQL enhancement possibilities, I think in a headless talk. So last minute, I've added this one. I forgot to mention that there are also the API mesh, and the API mesh is a way to be able to stitch to GraphQL API to be able to do some transformation, authentication, caching, and they add a feature every so often. So if you tap API mesh, AppBuilder, you'll be able to find more information about how it works and how this can apply to your project. OK, so how do you extend an application with AppBuilder? There are three main use cases. The first one is the middleware extensibility, so connecting something within the Adobe space to something outside, and you'll do that most of the time through eventing and IO runtime to have this function to be able to transform or to call in other external services. You got the core service extensibility, which if you want is the exact same case, but it's an Adobe app talking to itself or talking to a neighboring Adobe application. And you've got the last one we'll be mentioning more during this talk, which is the user experience extensibility. So be able to modify, in that case, not what the customer sees, but what our authors or other backend user will be able to see. So just so you know, in this presentation, we'll be doing some middleware extensibility and user extensibility. OK, so when it comes to AppBuilder, we like to put into comparison two types of extensibility of application, what we call in-process and what we call out-of-process. So in-process is what you would currently do if you're running code within AEM. You would be writing your extension in Java. You'd be doing a lot of things. In a lot of cases, it makes a lot of sense to write them because this is the best way to be able to get. But it comes with some side problems, which could be, by example, that it's bound to your deployment of your AEM instance. It takes time. It can have impact on your business if there's any problem with your code. So it can add, in a sense, if it's not the most efficient way to deploy your code, a bit of disadvantages. When we think of out-of-process extensibility, the first thing we see is that it's the exact same language as the front end. Both CF editor, CF admin are written in JavaScript. It's a natural language to be able to write front-end interaction in general. So you've got a common stack of technology. It's easy to maintenance and release because we're talking about here just a bunch of JavaScript file in a single repository. So the developer experience, the whole CI pipeline is by separate from the AEM main content. Flexibility, due to the nature of the code, the fact that we can separate extension in different application per se. And in the end, it's probably also less code depending on your use case because you're directly touching an API that's meant to be modified. So in the end, that's probably for the use case that we're talking here will reduce the total cost of ownership. Let's look a bit about the extension points and what we can actually have within this AEM authoring to be able to increment it. So this is a very bad snapshot of console fragment admin. And what is interesting here is we see that at the top in blue here, that you can't see, is what we will call the action buttons. So action buttons are buttons that you click once you've selected one or multiple fragments. And the whole point is that they will process a transformation on this selection. The other extension point that we have is to create the header buttons. Like, for example, the create button that we've seen in a previous slide, which would be visible if we didn't select any content fragment in that case. Here we also see floating around a modal to be able to give the interaction with our users a bit more content. And afterwards, interesting, we can also add columns with custom rendering, sorting, or whatever, because sometimes there's metadata property that we want to add to our content fragment, which are not available on the AEM instance. That might be in a PIM, that might be somewhere else. And that is a way to be able for you to edit it without adding that information in AEM. Then, of course, all of the buttons that we've talked about, whether it's header or action, can be drop-down menus in case you have multiple related actions. And, of course, you can use the React Spectrum icons to do that. So that's the whole extensibility point of view for content fragment admin. Now we've got editor, so I'm sorry for the quality of those GIFs. There's 4 main points. It's RT extension, so Rix checks editor. Very simply, variable, bracket, name of a variable, will be replaced by a value. The toolbar, you've got a button, you click it, it does something, whether it's filling with a specific value or opening a modal. Header menu, it's a header menu like the previous one. And badges, they are also a slight different on a variable. They're just a value that will be repeated over in your content. So let's talk about now the use case implementation for you today, which is the meat of the subject. So what we'll try to build today with the different extension points that I've shown you is an integration with OpenAI DALL-E. So it will be in the console fragment editor. We'll click on, well, we'll select the content fragment first. We'll click generate an image. We'll put some text, click generate, and this will happen. So let's start a bit about how we would go along to create this extension. So the first thing you need to do, create an extension if you have an AppBuilder enabled organization, which we will talk after how you can get that, is you go in the console, so developer.adobe.com, and you create a console project, which is with an AppBuilder template. Once you've got this, you've got everything you need to get started. You can go in a terminal, use AIO CLI. I'll show you some content if we have some time at the end, where we'll be using AIO CLI create app to be able to create an application. It will ask you which template we want to choose. There's one specific for content fragment admin, another one for the editor, and it will walk you through whether you want buttons or not. Third one, we need to customize our code. So that's where the magic happens. This is where we will be feeding our model, creating our runtime action to contact with OpenAI, and so forth, and so on. We'll be looking at code afterwards, don't worry. Once it's done, you just AIO app run. This will ensure that the code is working. You can do some local testing, include your extension within your AEM instance and see that it works, because you can do that at runtime. You don't need to build anything apart from the JavaScript of the extension. And then once you're ready to go to deploy it, you deploy it, AIO app deploy, and that's it. The extension is now a URL that you can use, and you can use it directly in any live AEM instance. So let's look at a particular use case and how we would start designing it. So what we want to be able to do, we want to be able to generate an image using the Open API. Great, we've got a JPEG somewhere, a link. We want to take that image, and we want to upload it to the AEM DAM, the asset manager. And afterwards, once it's in the AEM scope, we want to be able to link it to the content fragment image property we'll be setting up. So just to show it works, there's a quick presentation where the whole interaction will be looking so. Here we go to the content fragment console admin. We click on it. It loads. Amazing. We're going to select a configuration. We're going to select the content fragment. There's the button that was created, the generate image here on top. Here we're going to put very interesting text. We'll be using credit because remembering that we need to pay when we call this API. Here I'm asking just for London skyline in the style of a famous artist. I'll click use credits. Can I spell correctly? Yes. This will do the call to the OpenAI. We'll do the call back to asset management, and we'll link into the content fragment. So now there's a link to the image that was generated. So this is directly the asset management image. And if we close this thing and we go to the content fragment in the edition, we'll see that by magic, here in the bottom right, tinily, you see the image has been linked to the content fragment. So now let's look a bit at the code and how it goes. So firstly, high-level architecture. So there's two parts. There's the UI part and there's the backend part. So the UI part, as you can see, is a button with a text called generate image, simple enough. Second part is the extension model. Extension model is just a tiny React app that has a few fields and a button to submit. And when you submit it, it's being sent to Adobe I/O Runtime. And on Adobe I/O Runtime, we do sequentially do three actions, which are generate image, upload image, and update CF, the content fragment. Let's look at the code that was generated by the template. I'll show you how this is generated afterwards. So this is the most basic manifest that we need to have in an AppBuilder application. It's called manifest.yaml. It will tell us what there is in our application. So the first thing we see on top is the declaration of the UI part. So the UI part means the React app part, which is our button and our model. It's just saying, like, look at index.html. The second part is a bit more verbose, but it's just runtime saying, hey, there's a function called action generate image. It's running Node.js. That's the license, and that's where it's called. And that's about it. So now we'll look a bit at the code which are embedded in those two files. So the first one is the extension registration. Excuse me, it's probably not very visible here, but you don't have to look into details. This is where our extension says what it does. And it does one thing. It generates a button, and this button has got an on-call. At the moment, the on-call is commented. We'll look at the code. It's not super interesting either. It's just what you expect it to be. And a button is just an ID, a label, and an icon, the icon being a Spectrum UI icon. So now the onClick function, better. So the onClick function, the only thing that it does is it generates a URL using the IDs that were passed, the content fragment IDs in that case, being sent by our framework. And then it calls through a connection provided by the framework, guest connection, to show the model in the URL. So we'll see what this model is. Very good. This is the app structure. So just so you understand a bit better, like the routing in this application, there's two parts. The first part on top is the extension registration. For technical reason, we need to have two, but don't worry, it's the exact same one. Just when you have slash and slash index, it should return the code that says to the application, hey, I'm a UI application, and I have a button, and the button is actually in that component. The second part is the root is literally the model. So a content fragment, the ID, and the end of the pass, which is generate model. Model, lot of code, but again, it's React, so it's actually not a lot of code. It's just a text field that says, please enter your text, and two buttons that says one cancel and the other agree. And there's, of course, the code that will throw this to the runtime application. It's not present here. Now, from a very high-level point of view, I will not go into detail because I'm sure in JavaScript you know how to call the OpenAI URL, you know how to call the DAM, you know how to link a DAM entry to a thing. The whole code exists in GitHub, so if you want to look at it, I'll share it with you. But we have a main action, which is the entry point of any AppBuilder IO runtime application. And in that app, one after the other, we'll be doing the three actions. You will tell me there's no error management, and you will be right. But this is a demo, so we won't go too much into that. Yes, so we do first image generation, we do upload to assets, and we link the content fragment. So, key takeaways from a high-level perspective. So this new AEM Authoring provide us with UI extensibility. The UI extensibility with AppBuilder enables us to create new authoring experience, new features for our customer without modifying AEM. So it enables you to create experiment, to create features for a set of customer, for a particular instance, and to be quick to turn that around. Now let's talk a bit about what's coming next for this UI extensibility. Just so you know, there's more points coming up. We are working currently on the universal editor to create more points. We're also using our own dog food, per se, and UI extensibility as a first-class action. Internally, we're working on using generative AI to increment content within AEM. So you've got a text box, and you've got different parameters, which are the typical input for something like ChatGPT. And you'd be able to say, like, I want to rephrase that with that mood, with that thing, and that be working. So this is something that we'll be able to enable, disable. And the third one is AEM Lab. So DO's first-party experience, when they'll be available. Through AEM Lab, it's just a way to be able to deploy UI extensions with no code. It's just a click-through to be able to enable and disable them for you. So you don't have to deploy it in case a business user would like to try, for example, a Gen AI feature when it will be available. We're very open to receive any information or interest that you would have for extension points. If you have any ideas of where we could create new buttons, new place you would like to modify the UI, please send us an email at ux@adobe. We're very interested to know about this. I mentioned that AppBuilder was available for all AEM as a cloud service instance. So if you have one and you contact your sales team, you'll be able to be onboarded, still a manual onboarding, so that's why you need to contact them. But once you get onboarded, you get access, and you have all the AppBuilder functionality. There's all the documentation online to see what you can and can't do on the things. And last but not least, those are the links for the different parts of documentations that are available. So the first one, the GitHub repo with the cloud samples. I can show it to you right here. So this is where you will see the exact documentation, the code of what I've been doing. And just so I don't lie to you, this is the actual. Oh, this is not being shown. OK. Can I have the other screen? Oh, I need to remove the presentation mode, probably. Yeah. Well, if you see your brother, if you can put it on. Just think there's a GitHub page just full of JavaScript. That was verbously what was done beforehand. It's available to everyone. It's on the link AEM UI example. There's also an Experience League article that goes to exactly the same extension that I presented to you with a bit more details. If you're interested, you tap AEM OpenAI. You will find upon it. It's a blog entry. And we've got, if you tap AEM, and UIX, you'll be able to find our documentation, which is available on Adobe Docs with all of the extension point and the documentation you can find. Thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions,
Félix, question time.
Very good.
Yeah. Let's start here. You said AEM as a cloud service. Any plans for 6.5?
Don't ask me. They tell me extend that thing. We did extend that. So that's out of my hands, sadly.
Then Henry would like to know, does this only apply to content fragments, UI, or similar? He talks about adding custom content finder, rail tabs, etc.
So, I mean, this is a JavaScript library that we need to hand add to any application. So far, we've done it to CF-admin, CF-editor. Commerce is doing it to its backend on some pages. UI Universal will be the next to come. If you've got interest and there's value to it, send us an email, and we'll be very interested to look into this. We need a use case.
Are the API calls toward AEM running into the logged-in users context?
That is a very good question. I don't remember how I've done that. I say you should, I mean, I don't know, like, there's a GitHub repository. Please look, AEM UI example. There's all the code, and it's, you will find your answer there. I'm sorry. I've read that 6 months ago.
Permissioning. Is there any permission system behind the workspaces so that the fear is there the developer accidentally deploys it into production workspace? So
you can't deploy it into production workspace. There's a publishing process that requires a two-step verification. So for the good, it's like you're never going to deploy something you don't want. For the bad thing is that you need to have somebody else click on OK, it's going to be deployed, which can be problematic.
What's the impact on the demo extension having on loading, authoring UI?
So we try to make it as fast as possible. We're not at Lighthouse 100. It's a work in progress. You've got to think that this is a lot of JavaScript and loading, React, and so forth. So trying to lower the impact. But yes, this is not for final customer. This is for backend customer, for which a second more will not tremendously impact negatively their experience. But we try to make it as fast as we can.
That's so interesting. Would this method of extensibility, which appears, as you said, for AEM as a cloud service exclusive, not cause even more divide between the different AVM offerings?
So I will cite Radu, which says it's just another tool. If you use it, great. If you don't use it, great. Like, you don't have to use it. And if you really want to use it on your personal project, it's also a library that's published under Apache. UIX SDK. You can look at the code and see how it's done.
Excellent. Thank you, Félix.
Thank you very much.
It was great to have you on stage.